when he was there, and Fleming Rutledge. That's how I met both of them.
That's great.
Pretty sweet.
I was so intimidated by both of them. So, Chris, while we were getting the tech organized, I'm going to assume that you were primed with your questions for Stan about his new book about books. So I'm going to defer to you here at the beginning, Chris.
Okay, great. Thanks for doing this, Stan. Thanks for this conversation, but also the book. I'm sure you've heard that already from a lot of folks, but it's a gift to all of us who read you and to all of us who do theology.
I feel very ambiguous about it. There's too much of me in the book, but there's too much of me in everything that I've done to write the book. So I have to come to terms with myself.
Well, that is some of what I think the rest of us enjoy about it, though. And you do say this 2 or 3 times in the book that you the writing of it was fun, or at least at times, and that you hope the reading of it is. And that's certainly true. I had a couple of laugh out loud moments, including perhaps most of all when you said that those who take issue with you referencing your work as a kind of craft like bricklaying, your response would just be "screw you," which I thought was vintage. I mean, I was the middle of the night and I burst out laughing, woke my wife up. Like, why are you laughing? Well, it's just Stanley being Stanley. That's it.
I think I also wanted to do the book because I wanted to fly the flag of serious theological work and ethics, given the fact that that seems to be being given up by most people that are now writing in ethics. And I wanted to at least put the stake in the ground to say that everything that I've been about has been about God, and I don't want that lost.
Yes.
The identity politics that is shaping so much of reflection in theology and ethics, I think, is a disaster. And that was one of the things I wanted the book at least to call into question.
How so?
Well, I think I'm trying to come up with a way to say this that doesn't seem petty.
Sure.
Namely, that though this book has a lot of me in it, the me that is in it is a me that has been shaped by readings that are substantive alternatives to the way things are. So the claim that is made so often today in terms of placing oneself in relationship to certain liberation causes is I hope given an alternative by what I'm doing and remembering. We're a long way away from Martin Luther King. King was a Southern Baptist pastor. Well, he wasn't Southern, of course, but it meant that the center of his work was always um, the church that worships the God of Jesus Christ. Um, that seems to me to be increasingly lost.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another way of putting that for you, Stan, in this book is this biography of books is very much about your identity, but it's about your identity as constituted by all of these friends that you've acquired over a lifetime.
That's a lovely way to put it. I hope that's true. Um, I one of the things that has become increasingly uh, present to me, and it's a bit it takes you back. Is since I've been retired, I discover people for who I have been absolutely crucial in their lives, and I didn't know who they were. And
I have
it's
no
a bit
doubt that's true.
it's a bit frightening because um, you uh, you're you thank God that you've had some shaping of another person's life, but do you want to take responsibility for that? It's it's a bit frightening, but nonetheless, it's there, and how to take ownership of it is uh, something you have to do.
Well, I mean, Chris and I are friends because you and Jensen brought us together. And so, yeah, we have a friendship entirely, yeah, responsible because of you and him. So,
Chris, I can't remember, where are you?
So I'm teaching at Southeastern, which is a school in Florida. But I spent a couple of years during my PhD work studying with Jens. So he was a mentor for me, kind of got me through. I wrote about the sacraments and the Pentecostal tradition, actually. So we talked a lot about his sacramental theology and also the connections between Lutheran pietism and Methodist pietism, which I know you've also written about.
Uh,
And yeah, he was a absolute godsend for me.
did you get into the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee?
I lived there for a few years and taught at the seminary there. Yes,
They're wonderful people.
I really are. My time there at the seminary was terrific. And I know you knew Jonathan Martin, who was a dear friend of mine as well. It still is a dear friend of mine, but that is one of the connections I know you had there. One of my best memories is you at his church in Charlotte, which was quite an event. Those Pentecostal folks didn't know exactly what had hit them.
I, I think it's fascinating, and I think quite reasonable that the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee, has discovered that their primary conversation partners are Roman Catholics, not Protestants.
Yes.
That I'm
explain that more, Stanley.
well, they're the lady that taught homiletics. Her name's Johns.
Cheryl Bridges
Right? I
Johns.
can't remember. Yes, right. She exemplifies it just to the extent that as a Pentecostal, she's giving an account of the work of the Holy Spirit that makes the identification of the church as sacrament uh, necessary in a way that means the rationalism of Protestantism account of Eucharistic identity is put to the side in a way that Catholic sacramentality is extremely, uh, extremely interesting in a way that pull you into it. It's a very complex movement, but one that I enjoy.
Yes,
Is that?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I mean, you
I
know,
was just thinking. I'm wondering, Chris, if you could flesh out for people how Stanley became important to you, having grown up in how do you put it, blood and sweat Pentecostalism.
Yeah, sweat and blood Pentecostalism. That's right. Well,
So yeah, so Stanley's work could seem you know, odd work for someone like that to take up.
yeah, I think if I'm testifying about it, I would say there were kind of two stages to my reading and listening to Stanley, and of course, a lot of this is listening too. You know, hearing him at conferences or watching online, as well as reading books and articles. Yeah, I can remember saving up to buy the Hauerwas reader. You know, talking my wife into, hey, no, like I need it, and but I think that initially it's just you've never heard anyone that sounds like this in every sense of that phrase, right? You've never heard anyone that sounds like this. And having grown up with Pentecostal preaching, I was drawn to stuff that had a style, like that had a kind of a feel to it. And I think so. I think at the first level, there was something recognizably real about it.
Mm-hmm.
The craft mattered, and it rung true for me. So I think that was kind of initially the draw. But at some point I started to make the actual connections. And I think, you know, this is one of the reasons, you know, Jens and I would talk about this in our conversations. Slowly I started to see the kind of deep structure of what I as a Pentecostal held to be truest about my inheritance and what I was seeing to be true in the faith that had been given to the whole church. That you did have to say some things about the church and about what the church is doing when it gathers, about preaching and Eucharist and baptism, that somehow fit together. I just wasn't sure how. And I think that it was, especially in sermons, not only there, Stanley making those connections, and then the way that he was reading Bonhoeffer pointing in that direction. So I started reading Bonhoeffer because of him. And then I started to see those connections more. And then I started reading Jensen. And basically, I read and prayed my way down into my Pentecostal roots into Anglicanism because of that. Because I think that what you have, whether it's with folks like Cheryl or others at the seminary there, and more broadly in the Pentecostal, in the academic dialogue with Pentecostals, people who are realizing, oh, this, ironically, and in a way that only God could bring about, like these free church revivalist Pentecostals are talking about what the church has always said the church is to be. And these moments, including sacraments at the table of the Lord, you know, you have like Frank Macchia writing about speaking in tongues as sacramental, foot washing as sacramental, like starting to think in those terms in a way that was lost in a lot of other Protestant circles, if not entirely lost, at least muted. And so it comes down to a belief that there is a living God and he's called his people to live a certain way. And I think that it was Stanley and then Bonhoeffer and then Jensen who taught me how to think about what that might really mean. And I think I kind of read my way down into those depths.
that's lovely
It
said.
is. Well, yeah, because so Stan, like, you know, you've written a biography of the books that you've written, but the other side of that, it's also a biography of the people who've read your books.
Right.
You know, I discovered you in seminary because Someone at the faculty lunch was outraged by something you had written. And
Alice.
and you know, the notion that Jesus should make a difference to the work of theology, um, that made a difference.
Yeah, that's it right there. That's it right there. And that's what, Walter Holenweger, the first person to kind of study global Pentecostalism, he's the one who said that Pentecostalism is really about Jesus, not about the Holy Spirit, it as abstracted from Jesus, and that it is a form of blood and wound mysticism. And that I think is the connection point. Exactly.
And I mean, I learned how to write theological sentences from you, Stan. In that your style is so distinctive, it invites imitation. And so I got good at writing a Stanley Hauerwas sentence that could probably pass as something you'd written. And I don't do that anymore, but like that freed me to figure out how to do the work. And then
One of the,
also,
I'm
you
sorry.
know, I went to seminary not long after having become a Christian, and I quickly felt suffocated by the moralism of mainline Christianity. And you opened up a way of thinking about the commandments and exemplification and eschatology that resisted just stifling moralism.
I think one of the things I wanted to, for our beginnings, uh, I'm sorry, for remembering to do is show the connections between the details. Um, like, it, I think the little book on the Ten Commandments
Mm-hmm.
is really a good book that explores some ways of thinking about the role of the Ten Commandments in our life. That is worth considering because um, one one of the things that that little book does is show the connections between the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, I actually think Calvin did a pretty good job about that. And the connections is made by Christ.
Yep.
Uh, in terms of what each means. I would like to think that the book is filled with that kind of exercise, showing connections that uh, otherwise might be lost. I think uh, that book and the book on Sermon on the Mount is really a. It's meant to be. They're meant to be books that um, take up material that oftentimes is dismissed by many Christians as insufficiently uh, theological, but I try to show that that's not the case. The commentary on Matthew is a book that people thought I couldn't write, but it's written and it's actually I think been read quite a bit by
Mm-hmm.
pastors who have to preach on.
So, Stanley, this book originally started as a project about retractions, things that you would alter in your previous work. And Chris, as a reader of Stanley, I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how Stanley's thought has changed from beginning to end.
Yeah, yeah, I do have thoughts about it. I mean, I smiled multiple times thinking about that because I remember conversations before the book was published about at least some of your friends telling you it should be a retractions book, but there weren't a lot of retractions. And of course, there weren't for Augustine either. I mean, that's part of the joke. Right? He writes this massive work on retractions, mostly to say, I stand by virtually everything I said. And I think that's a wonderful joke, actually. I I think that there probably are changes. One of the things that's most interesting about the book is the books that you don't have much to say about. You know,
Hmm.
so some of the books that are best known or seem to have been the most widely read, you don't comment on much in this book. And some of the hidden ones you
That's a
bring to light.
very good comment. I I have thought that, as a matter of fact. I mean, I don't say much about the peaceful kingdom.
Right. Right. Even though you do say you think everything you have to say is in that book, but then you go right along to other books.
I uh, I wonder if that's that's not putting it without appropriate qualifications. I don't know that everything is in there. For example, I don't think the reflections in the work of theology, which I think is really a very substantive book, um, is in the peaceable kingdom. It, mainly, what I'm referring to is the work of theologies. What what does the work in the work of theology, namely language and the place of language in theological reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I didn't develop that very much in the peaceable kingdom.
Stanley, what about in some ways Hannah's Child is a completely different kind of book, and in other ways it's entirely consistent. Um, but it also got um, quite a bit of response. And you've had you know you've had a chunk of life lived since you wrote Hannah's Child, and I'm wondering if uh, there is another edition of it. What might you add to it?
I think I would add, um, I think I would add more about my ecclesial ambiguity in terms of what does it mean to be a liberal Protestant uh, Mennonite who probably is best found in Catholic context, namely, where did this guy get so confused? His ecclesial stance, and how do you live that out?
Chris, you're someone who exists in a convergent tradition now. Like, can you?
You're Episcopalian.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a part of the Episcopal Church, but a broader Anglican, continuing Anglican. So these are former Episcopal bishops, yeah, that founded our community.
So how might you gather up the strands of Stanley's ecclesial identity in a way that kind of parallels your own and makes sense to people?
A couple of thoughts. One is we just have to make do with where we are in history. I think it's a result of the fracturing of the church. There's a lot there to be grieved. I don't think we should take it lightly. And one of the things that we're going to run into and Stanley gave me language for this, is you shouldn't make up your own place in the tradition. You don't get to make this up, and you don't just get to pick where you want to be. I will often say to, friends and colleagues and students, like, the most important things about your life you don't get to pick, and if you pick them, it's disorienting for you. Like,
Mhm.
you don't actually want to be able to pick them. But we're in a situation, a lot of us, where there's some choice having to go into where we're located ecclesially. And I think that all we can do with that is grieve appropriately and then have a sense of humor about it. I don't think there's much else to do, and hope that Jensen is right about God working to bring the church to oneness in the future, and that what we're doing now is somehow helping that.
I quote
Yeah.
that. That's right there in the first part of the systematic, the first volume in the preface. He said he writes as a Catholic.
Yeah.
For the future visibly united church.
It just occurred to me. I get these letters, and I think I can read this without exposing a person.
Absolutely.
This 4-page letter says, "Hello, I hope you are well. This is my first ever fan letter, and it is to you. If you're trying to place the name, don't bother. We share some acquaintances, but I don't believe we've actually met. However, the story of your life left a huge impact on me and of my 3 children, and I'm in turn writing to thank you for that, a bit belatedly as it is. But nevertheless, I'm never nonetheless, having been found cleansed, I'm finally returning to the source with gratitude. This letter is coming to you now because I was trying to explain to a friend the importance you have been in my marriage and so on. I felt shame of describing to her." So it goes on, tells the narrative of some very difficult parts of his life and how it's come together by reading my stuff. What do you do?
As someone who's resisted sentimentality your whole career, I wonder how such a letter hits you.
Uh, it it depends. I say a letter like this makes me uh, humble and wonder what is God doing with uh, with what I've done. Uh, but as I said earlier, it also makes me anxious. How do you take responsibility for when someone tells you you've made a lot of difference in their life?
Mm-hmm.
I take it both of you have that happen all the time through.
I mean, I was honestly thinking of a former congregant that initially was made angry in sermons where I would reference your work. And then a couple of years ago, he sent me an email saying that had helped change his life. And so, yeah, so I know the impact you've had on lay people, just because of, my own call.
Yes. Yeah, and if
I
I could, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if this helps or hurts, makes it better or worse, but that line from Jensen about preaching, that preaching is letting the congregation watch you struggle with the text,
Uh,
which I love, like that sense of there's a kind of vulnerability to preaching. And at the beginning of this conversation and in the book itself, you talk about how there's probably too much of you in the book, but I really do believe some of what you've given, and part of the reason you get those kinds of letters and responses from people is that you've lived a public life in a lot of ways, and not just because of Hannah's Child and telling your story, just the way you carry yourself and the way you write. You let us see you struggling with what it means to be a Christian, and I think that that may be the most important gift you've given us. With all the other gifts, you're kind of letting us do that. So I don't think there's too much of you. I mean, I'm sure there are sins there that need to be confessed, but I don't think the problem is get out of the way. We want to hear your thoughts. I think there's something really unique about and pastoral. And that's another funny line in the book when you say, I don't have a reputation for being pastoral. And anyone who's read you or knows you is going to smile when they read that. But I actually think you are remarkably pastoral in a way that to me feels trustworthy because it's not sentimental and you're letting us watch you struggle. I'm grateful for that.
You're very kind. The one of the books that I don't do that much with is the book I've done with Brian Brock called Beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big chunk, but I thought his reading of me and then asking questions about the readings is very thick, and I probably should have said more about that book in terms of the that it reflects the dialogue. That's good. Do you know Brian?
I don't, but I read that book on an airplane and pretty much underlined the entire book. So if I read it again, I need to buy another copy.
He just written a huge book on creation. He's a first-rate theologian who I suppose is seen as an ethicist.
That's one of the things, Stanley, talk about that for a moment. One of the things that runs through the book is you naming the fact that you don't fit a disciplinary mold, that people call you an ethicist, but you're a theologian who's not even sure there should be something called Christian ethics.
Right.
I talk about that a bit.
It probably early on, I probably was identified myself as an ethicist. I had a PhD in that. And I'm not sure when I became clear that I'm a theologian first and foremost. But it was sometime during my time at Notre Dame that working with people like David Burrell, you'd better be a theologian, even though David was a philosopher, pastoral care person, and so on. But I think it became more important for me to identify as a theologian because I thought people who took me seriously needed to be identified as theologians, and that that attempt to make one coherent by declaring a that you are identified with a certain discipline just strikes me as a confusion of identifying work that leads to a narrowness that I abhor. The what is the case For example, I I I've done reading for years in, for example, classical Christological debates, um, and I think I know my way around in terms of such issues, but I don't ever write about them that much because other people have done it so well. I don't see why I need to do it again.
Who is you? Because you've written about your. Who was your teacher at Yale? Calhoun? Is that the name?
And Mr. Calhoun, he was wonderful. Uh, the Also, I learned a ton from Rowland Greer, who was a close friend and who I read the Cappadocians with. A lovely dog.
Yeah, he's named for Karl Rahner, so he's a Weimaraner, and his name is Karl Augustin Weimaraner.
Stanley, you're sort of your transition from ethicist to theologian coincides with you also taking on the role of preacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned will, I think 5 times in the book, but you don't say much about how you learned how to preach. So I'm wondering, what was that process like for you?
Um, well, first of all, my first uh, my first uh, appointment at Augustana, there was no place for me to preach, so I didn't preach with the Lutherans. Uh, I can't remember any time I gave a sermon there. Uh, then when I went to Notre Dame, uh, I was the Protestant who went to Sacred Heart. There was no place for me to preach there. I started, I suppose, preaching uh, at Broadway Christian Parish, uh, where John Smith, our pastor, uh, let me and wanted me to preach from time to time, and uh, I I found I thoroughly enjoyed it. Can y'all hear me, Chris? Oh, something's gone. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm not sure what happened there, Stan.
Where's Chris? I don't have Chris.
I don't know where he.
Uh, you're now on the left side of the screen. You are on the right.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, he's. Oh, here he is.
Oh, there you are.
Don't know
Can
what
you hear
happened.
me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
I was saying about preaching that I probably started at Broadway Christian Parish in South Bend, and um, where I then um, um, that wonderful young man in Canada that wrote
Mm-hmm.
his dissertation and book on me, did this book, a collection of my sermons, uh, which I, which is not in beginnings, which should have been. And he said that over time I preached over 200 sermons, and most of them have come, I suppose, at Broadway and um, at Holy Family. And the way I think about sermons is their arguments.
Yeah, it's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, and that you don't call attention to it, you just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you become a good preacher by attending to good preaching. And I've been lucky to hear some very good preachers, such as Rick Lisher, such as Will Willimon. Will, I always tell Will that he has the least philosophical ability of anyone I've ever known. That uh, he he never thinks his task is to write a sermon that is uh, philosophically tight. He he has a uh, passion for irony that makes his sermons uh, work because they're entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Um. So Stanley, I want to respect your time. What is your hope for this book? Remembering.
That people learn to read me in the details.
Hmm. Hmm.
I I think people read me and say, "Oh yeah, more sectarianism." I'm just tired of that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
um,
I don't think any close reading of you can sustain that critique.
no, but it's certainly a way a lot of people uh, um, use to not take me seriously.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking things seriously, I've had a lot of guest preachers preach for me over the years. I remember when I had you preach at my former church, you were adamant and intense about me praying with you and for you before you preached. And that left an impression on me. And so I'm wondering, Chris, if you could close our time with praying for Stanley and his ongoing ministry.
That'd be
Absolutely.
lovely, Chris. Which reminds me that one of the books that I've done that has continued to be used by many people is Prayers Plain Spoken.
Yeah.
And that book,
It's a great book.
is filled with fascinating theological claims that you don't notice until you're living them.
Hmm.
One of the hardest things about praying is knowing how to address God, and I read that in that book a lot. It's been great seeing y'all. I'm on Chris to pray, but it's been great seeing you again, Jason. It's been too long.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah,
How
thank
are
you
you
for
doing?
likewise.
Oh, it's great to do it. Where are you physically, Chris?
Oklahoma. I moved to be close to my parents here. So I was in Florida where the school is, but I moved back to be close to my parents and my sister who were ill.
Where in Oklahoma?
Just south of Norman, so right in the middle of the state.
Right. Of course, since you're from Oklahoma, you just trust Texans all the way down.
Those are really the two identities in the world, Oklahomans and Texans. Everyone else is just in the cloud of witnesses around the conflict.
Right. Please
All right,
pray.
pray us out, Chris.
I will. If I could, I'll say two things really quickly about what I would hope for this book. I mean, I hope people read it. I hope that reading it reminds us what reading and writing really is about in this vocation. This vocation being the work of the Lord, right? That this is holy work. It is work. It's holy work. And the kind of reader that Stanley is becomes the kind of writer that he is. I think you even say in the book somewhere, you learn to write by reading. Yeah.
That's right.
And that's evident. And I think that this is reading is not just a skill, right? It's a matter of spirit and heart, as well as skill and craft. And I hope this book is a revival of that for people.
Thank you.
And I think that In Good Company might have been an equally good title for this project.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's really, to me, about the kind of friend you are and the kind of friendships you sought out with people living and dead. And like you've been good company, Stanley, not just to us, folks like Jason and me, but to a lot of people in a lot of different settings.
Amen.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Let's pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Almighty God, thank you for the way you weave our lives together, for what you do that we do not understand, for what you do that we don't have any sense of your having done it all. Thank you for the gift of Stanley's life and work. Thank you for his character, for his heart, for the wisdom that he's received over his life, and for the friendships he's made, and for the testimony he's given to you, for pointing us back to you over and over again in all kinds of ways. God, I pray that this book and this season of his life will be one in which he is not just remembering, but bringing you present to people through that remembering, and giving us this reminder again that you are here, and you are good, and you can be trusted with our lives
Yeah.
and with what is happening in the world. We say this trusting ourselves to your name. Amen.
Amen.
It's great seeing y'all both.
Absolutely.
Have a good
So I'm
Lent.
gonna don't log out until I give you permission to.